Yo, what is up, Jazz Nation? Welcome back to Salt Lake Takes. We're back for another episode here. Back here in September. Still about a month away from the NBA season, a little bit more than that. I think it starts on the 25th or 24th is the official date. But man, the offseason is dragging along at this point. We got a little bit more time to go, but the NBA is a desert right now, man. In terms of news, you have like Damian Lillard and James Harden waiting on that kind of stuff. But in terms of like actual developments that have come out for the league, it seems very minimal for the time over the past like week or two or so like that. It's been kind of rough, but we keep moving. The Jazz season is approaching quicker and quicker by the day, and we're going to keep covering it here every week. And we're back here again. So we're back, and this week we're going to cover some Jazz betting odds. Not too much of a gambler myself. However, I do kind of enjoy looking at odds. It just kind of gives you like a pretty good, like, general consensus or public perception about what your team or other teams are kind of doing and like what it's always kind of nice to look at odds because like there's some surprising kind of numbers out there that you kind of encounter here and there. I think anyone that kind of follows sports has some interest in like betting lines or just over unders. I think it's pretty common to find, but there's a set of NBA ones that are out now on FanDuel specifically, and this isn't like gambling advice. I'm not telling you to go spend your money here, which way or anywhere. But yeah, we'll go ahead and dive right into it. And it's kind of hard to like really get all of the awards and predictions and like standings and stuff right now at this point in the NBA, or as far as betting lines go, because it is still pretty early in the process, still about a month out. So things will keep creeping up and developing and appearing here and there the closer we get to the season. But let me see. Can I let's see. Let me pull this up. Beautiful. Okay, we're on FanDuel here. Just browsing the odds here, seeing what we have going here. As far as the games go, I couldn't, I mean, like these are kind of hit or miss each way. We can start. I mean, we can start off here looking because we're gonna look at all of what the Jazz betting lines are and everything like that for the year. We can go ahead and start here with this first game against the Kings. I think -1 against a team like the Kings is pretty. It's pretty even. I mean, it is at home and a home opener and kind of a tough environment to open up for in Sacramento, or for Sacramento to walk into in Utah. I feel like it's a bit high for Utah. For the first game of the year, I would feel like Sacramento would come in. They didn't really change much as far as their team goes, and their offense is going to be only getting better. So I think they're going to come in and be really efficient and, not make many mistakes like they were last season, same type of stuff. But I think the Jazz will be, I mean, a lot of rookies will get minutes. You'll see a lot of inexperience kind of show out this game. I don't know if I'd put a lot of confidence in the Jazz here. However, again, I mean, it's pretty even odds here. It's kind of surprising to see them at -1, but it is early on in the year. I mean, even though like let's see here. For the Bucks to be like -4.5 against the Sixers and the Jazz to be about even, I feel like that kind of pops out a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. That seems a little bit odd. But I would probably take the Kings personally in this game. I do love the Jazz. Probably for the season, like season duration. But I think in your opener, even though it is at home, you have a lot of new pieces to integrate into the roster and kind of shake out how things are going to be. And I think that kind of adjustment might take some time, and especially against a team like the Kings, that might be a bit difficult to do off rip. But that's just one game. We're probably focusing more on like season long type of stuff here. But let's go into NBA Finals. I don't know if this is really relevant, but we can look at it anyways. The Jazz are plus 200 or 25,000 to win the championship this year, tied with the Pacers and the Spurs and the Blazers. I personally think that the Jazz probably have a little bit better odds than Portland or San Antonio, but I don't know. I think they're on a pretty similar tier than the Pacers. I think that they're at that point where they're kind of waiting and seeing, developing, waiting for their young guys to come in and start to really piece things all on mesh together. But like when it comes to winning a finals this year, it realistically will not be happening. There's just so much better teams in the division, or not even the division alone, but I was gonna say the conference. There's just so much talent surrounding you that I find it hard for the Jazz to really make a ton of noise as far as like a championship team this year. It's just not gonna happen. Weirdly enough, I'm looking at the player awards here. The only one here is going to be six man. I don't know why it's taking a little bit on the other awards here, like MVP or Rookie of the Year, but we have six man here. We can talk about six man because there is a bunch more for this the actual team itself. As you scroll down here, you don't see many Jasmine names here, but you do see Taylor Horton Tucker right here at about plus 6,000, tied with guys like Rui Hachimura, D'Anthony Melton, Isaiah Joe, Brandon Clark, kind of guys. Well, the guys above them are kind of like um, really key pieces or key role players on a championship roster. That's what you can see it as. But Taylor Horton Tucker finds himself in a little bit. Let me crop it here. There you go. Taylor Tucker kind of finds himself in an interesting spot here because he is with those types of guys that kind of have more of a lower ceiling. Like Rui Hachimura probably isn't going to come in and be a prime six man of the year candidate. None of these guys are. But I mean, you look up the list, you look at the type of upside that Taylor Horton Tucker provides. Outside of these guys, I mean, we haven't seen the full experience of Taylor Horton Tucker yet. But it really just depends for what he's going to showcase for the Jazz this year. It really depends on what his role is going to transition into, because at the end of last year, he was really getting a bulk of the point guard and just guard minutes entirely because a lot of the Jazz starters were out and they weren't playing. So it opened the door for THT to come in and actually get some valuable experience. And he kind of showed up pretty well. Not perfect by any means, but again, it is more of like a test year, especially last year. So it's not like you put a lot of stock into his inefficiencies and problems there. But this year is big because it is a contract year. You'd expect a lot to come here out of Taylor Horton Tucker. But it's a crowded backcourt. It really is, because you're bringing in Keontae George. You already have Colin Sexton coming back after injury. Jordan Clarkson just re-upped on a new deal. Chris Dunn is probably going to have another solid piece in the rotation. So like the route for Taylor Horton Tucker to have an established, like role on this team as a starter. Well, this is for six man, but as an established bench piece, I find that a bit difficult at this point. Of course, anything can happen. But I think when you look at the guys above him in the six man of the year race, you see guys like Gary Trent who are scoring at a more efficient rate and just more effective rate. Cam Thomas, I think, has a more, boom potential here. Russell Westbrook, I think, is a more viable candidate here for six man. Kevin Porter Jr. I mean, when you keep going up the list, Josh Hart, Christian Wood, there's just a lot of names for someone like Taylor Horton Tucker to compete with. I think if it comes to Taylor Horton Tucker winning an award, I think a more attainable one would probably be most improved. It'd be kind of shocking to see the Jazz win back-to-back most improved players, but I mean, when you really think about it, a Taylor Horton Tucker six man of the year would imply a lot of growth on his side. And I think for that to even happen, or a consideration for six man of the year, first of all, I think the Jazz have to be somewhat competitive, which you're betting on that in itself. Secondly, you're betting on a big jump and a lot of those things to break his way in terms of the rotation. So I think seeing Taylor Horton Tucker as a six man, like prime candidate, is a little unrealistic, but there is a ton of potential for him to grow because he has all the tools there. He has a great size, great wingspan. He has a nice shot that's coming around right now. Got nice defensive potential. It's just, you got a lot to love with Taylor Tucker, but you don't really know what's going to develop from it, especially this year. But this would be the year to put everything together. Because if nothing really happens this year on Taylor Horton Tucker, I would consider him being gone from the Jazz after this next summer, because he is a free agent. I would find it really difficult for the Jazz to be like, all right, I can't wait to give you a second contract after seeing maybe, just a little bit of maybe. And taking nothing away from Taylor Horton Tucker, because he's still a great player and he has a ton of potential. But again, it's betting on a lot of things to go right for him. Let's go ahead and move on here. We can go to what I want to get to next. Oh, conference. Here's something that I think is a little bit interesting. So you go into, that's East, my fault. As you go into the Western Conference, who will win the conference? And now, well, the Jazz aren't really going to be a prime contender to come in and win the West, and they probably, I can go and say with pretty much guarantee that they will not be winning the West. But I mean, that would be a shock. They're right below the Portland Trailblazers, like about plus 2,000 below them in terms of realism to win the division. I find that to be a little shocking. I think the route, I mean, this is such a long shot, like for thing to even happen, but I think the route for the Jazz to win the conference is much more realistic than the Blazers. And again, it's so minor because neither are very realistic. But I mean, man, the Blazers were just. I mean, they're going to trade Lillard and be one of the youngest teams in the league, most inexperienced. Do you think they're going to be more likely to win this conference? I don't really know about that one. But I think it's a bit interesting when we come down here to the division winners, because the Jazz are ranked above the Blazers in the division, but ranked below them in the conference, which makes zero sense. And the fact that the Blazers are plus 10,000 to win this division, and Utah is plus 34, but then you come up here for the conference odds, and they're just a bit skewed the other way. I don't understand that personally. Maybe that's something going above my head, but yeah, I think in terms of winning the division or conference, there is a very clear giant that stands in the way in the Denver Nuggets. It's going to take a few years to really catch up to them, man, and that's okay. This team has a lot of ammo to really come out and build on top of what they've been doing. So maybe this comes in a few years, but not right now. No, I wouldn't put much stock into that one. And here's a very interesting one. I feel we're going to regular season wins. The over under for the Jazz this upcoming season, 35.5. This would project some regression on the Jazz side because they won 37 last year. This would be saying that they, lose more. Oh, well, okay. So I'm looking at, okay. So the over is a little bit more favored because, I mean, they did win 37 last year. And it's about even for under. So it's about 50-50 about. So, and I think that's a little bit underselling for the Jazz. I'm not going to come in here and say they're going to win 50 games. I think everyone kind of knows that's not going to happen. But, I mean, there is a case for both sides here when you're talking about the Jazz for next season, because you have the side that's like, okay, this team has way less experience now because you have 3 new rookies and you're bringing on John Collins and replacement for Rudy Gay. So maybe this team wins less games in terms of that. The player development is going to be a big factor this year, so maybe they emphasize that instead of winning games. I know that the roster moves have indicated they're going to try and remain competitive, but I think you're going to have to put in a lot of, stock into playing those young players, a lot of minutes. So putting a lot of investment into that is going to probably bar you from, really maintaining competitiveness in every single game of this 82-game season. And the West is just stacked, which is why I would see the case to see them losing under or winning under 35 games. But then again, the Jazz didn't get worse. They got better in terms of talent. They are a much better team than they were last year, top to bottom. And they got healthier. And they're going to be healthier this next year. They should be pretty much 100% walking into this upcoming year. And that's a very good thing for this team, considering that a lot of their players on the stretch were just beaten up and injured, or just not playing because this team had a clear motive last season. But it's a year 2, new head coach with a new kind of regime, new roster. Everything's just going to get better from here on out. I don't really see too much of a route for where this team takes a step back from last year, unless you're really putting in a lot of emphasis on that young talent. I don't really know about that because, again, this team is going to be is going to come in and try and win some games. They're not going to come in and tank like you see some other teams. I can't even say with a lot of confidence a lot of teams are tanking this year, besides maybe the Wizards and I'm probably forgetting another few. But a lot of teams in the league are remaining competitive, and especially the Jazz. But I would probably predict this line to be around 40 wins rather than 35. In terms of at least what I think. I mean, I think projecting 3 more wins from this roster, even though it is a competitive division and conference, I don't know. I just feel like you can't really expect this team to get much worse. I think it's only up from here because they were trying to intentionally lose games last year, along with adding more talent to this team. That in itself should be a good case for this team to win over 35 games. Now, of course, you have the youth and you have everything else like that could make it a little bit harder for him. But then again, we've seen some crazier things. We saw Donovan Mitchell in his first year with the Jazz, in his rookie year, lead this team to the playoffs. So this is absolutely attainable for the Jazz, but it's all about how quickly this team can put things together. Take the over here, Milwaukee, Andrew. I would probably agree. Just because I feel like I would bet on the upside on this team rather than trying to bet they are going to take a fall off. But enough on that. I've kind of rambled on that for a little bit. Let's see, how much have we really got? We don't have much more, man. I mean, when you look at the odds that we have right here, we have player awards that is just, probably the most like the least significant award out of the collection, and then you kind of have your answer here for the Jazz in terms of conference and division play. But to make the playoffs, we'll finish off with this one right here because people got football to watch tonight. I don't know if anyone's really focusing on NBA, but we're gonna talk about it anyways. But yeah, we got to make the Western Conference playoffs. Where are they at? The Jazz plus 420, which puts them in the group of. Okay, so this is interesting. Would this be the play-in tournament? Like, would this consist of the first 8 teams, like postseason, or not? Or this be just the 8 teams? Because you have the minus for either for Thunder and Timberwolves. I don't know. I think this will just be probably just the top 8 teams. Parker says, will they win it all? No, I don't think so. Probably not. I mean, unless Keontae George becomes Donovan Mitchell, Walker Kessler becomes Rudy Gobert, and then Lauri Markkanen becomes Kevin Durant. Maybe there's a chance in that sense, but I mean, even still, you have a really tough conference ahead of you to come and play. But yeah, in terms of making a playoff push, though, I think plus 420, and such a big gap between Pelicans, Thunder, and Timberwolves. I think that makes this really tempting in terms of you can throw a little bit of gamble on that. I don't know, but it just Utah is going to be a team that's boom or bust this upcoming year because they have so much young talent. You don't really know what to expect. But so is a team like OKC and Minnesota and New Orleans because we saw what can go wrong with them like last season. But then again, they also have some positives going their way. Like the Pelicans going to be fully healthy, just like the Jazz are. Timberwolves, same deal. They were both beaten up last year. So were the Jazz. So the same type of case you can make for the Jazz that they're like, oh, they're going to be much more healthier and competitive this year. It can be the same. Same can be said for Minnesota and New Orleans. So I think it might be difficult to give them an edge over those teams because of that. It just really depends on how high you are on this team. The Thunder are a team I'm super confident in that they're going to make the playoffs this upcoming year. But again, they're a young team. They're a young team that has a lot to prove this upcoming year. And again, it all comes down to how well they can all put it together, especially adding like Chet Holmgren to the mix. It adds a nice addition. It brings a nice addition to your team for something that you needed. For the Thunder, at least you have rim protection that you needed on that team specifically. And Chet's a great prospect to bring in for that. But yeah, we have, as Welke saying, do the Jazz have more depth than those other mid-tier teams? That's a great question. Let's go into it. Minnesota, I would say absolutely. The Jazz definitely have more depth than Minnesota. Just because of that young talent that they've stockpiled. Minnesota has tried to do that. Because I think that they have Leonard Miller and Wendell Moore, and who else? I forget who they have. Jay McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, so they have some young talent. But then that's definitely a more top-heavy team than depth, and I think they know that. That's what Minnesota's been built on, is star talent, and it's still questionable to see if that'll actually come to success. But I mean, depth-wise, I would take the Jazz. Thunder are a deep team, but they're a young team. I would probably take that's probably a push. I would probably say Jazz and Thunder have about similar depth. I would take the Pelicans are also really interesting because they have guys like Herb Jones and like Larry Nance and who am I missing on that team? They have a lot of heavy hitters on that team. Lots of like Dyson Daniels and Kira Lewis, more projects. Trey Murphy. Sorry, he just got injured. Yeah, for that, I'll since Trey Murphy got injured, I'll take the Jazz over them. But yeah, that's probably like the other mid-tier teams. But I think in terms of depth, the Jazz are definitely probably the best in terms of these mid-tier level rosters because they have that youth and just that that divide of talent like in the middle right there. Kind of hard to explain, but you have like Colin Sexton that's gonna be off the bench. Who else? I'm blanking right here, but you have like Ocha that might come off the bench. I'm not sure. Like Chris Dunn, Taylor Horton Tucker, and all the young pieces, or all the 3 first round picks you have, John Collins, maybe Kelly Olynyk. But like you can rattle off like 10 potential pieces that could be a nice depth rotational player. But that's what I'm saying. Like you could make a case for a lot of these players that you couldn't really do for a team like the Timberwolves. So to answer your question, yes, they do have more depth than those other mid-tier teams. And that's a big thing when you're getting into the season, especially for the NBA, because you have a lot of star players and a lot of, turnover and who's playing night to night. You want to be able to have that next man up and ready to play. And the Jazz do have that. And while it might take a little bit of time for the younger guys, get their footing set, the sky's the limit with the guys like Keontae and Taylor Hendricks, because they have all the tools to really, blossom into a star. Really, they do. What else we got here? I think, yeah, because I was make the playoffs, and then all right, we got one more. Make the play-in tournament, and this is a weird one to look at. I was looking at it earlier because every team has about pretty similar odds, except for like Denver and like the really bad teams. So like I think all of these teams kind of like I think it's hard to predict the play-in more than is the playoffs, because the play-in is so like the Warriors and Lakers were in there a few years ago. Like the Heat, like it's hard to predict like who will be in the play-in. I think because the conferences are so, especially last year in the West, they were so tight together. It's hard to be like, yeah, this will be 7 and 8 seed. This will be 5 seed. It could be within 1 or 2 games, which is why I think you see all these like plus 100, 200. So the Jazz, it's hard to really make a judgment there, but I think they do have a better chance than the Rockets. They'll probably be in there over the Suns just because the Suns will be better and probably a playoff team. And yeah, I think that's pretty fair in terms of to make the playoffs. Would I take the bet? I think this play-in, sorry. Take the play-in. I think the Jazz probably will make the play-in. This could very well change, but I think the play-in is very attainable for the Jazz. Sorry, I'm getting behind here. Injuries always concerned for the Jazz. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. Injuries are always concerned, so the Jazz depth might be a difference. I agree. Definitely. Yeah, you got to, at the end of the day, the healthiest team usually wins the championship, even though that might not be the Jazz. But, the premise is kind of the same. The plan is very confusing. It can be. It can be. I mean, I think it just takes a few years to really get it used to, because it is weird to have 20 teams really competing for the postseason. But it's in a league like the NBA, I don't know. Like, there's so much talent within the middle right there that like you can make a case it could be a playoff team, even if they are like a little bit like under 500. There are teams that make late season pushes and like younger teams that come in and develop. I don't know. I would probably stick towards a more like stricter, shorter playoff format rather than such a long, extensive one like the NBA has. I don't know though. It seems like fans really enjoy the plans because it does provide good basketball. It does. But then again, it is a little confusing at times. You're right, especially when you look at these odds, man. I mean, look. I mean, you got everyone's at like 1-200. This is literally like you're throwing like a quarter in the air and like hoping it lands somewhere like lucky. I don't know. Like, it's hard to gamble on something like this. But yeah. But that, I mean, as far as like odds I can really go over, that's about all I have here. I wish there was more to go over. Because player awards, we have nothing. Lower market MVP, maybe it happens. That's probably a little bit overreaching there. Maybe Walker Kessler most improved, or what else? Walker. I wrote about Walker Kessler being a defensive player of the year candidate. Maybe that could happen. I don't know what the odds. Well, I said the odds. I think they were like plus 2,000 or something like that for Walker Kessler to win defensive player of the year. If that were to happen, that would have to be a big leap from the Jazz as far as like a team construction standpoint, as well as like a prestige and just Walker Kessler in general. If he's going to come in and be a defensive player of the year candidate, I mean, man, that would be really impressive from him. Rookie of the year. So the Jazz would have 3 candidates for that. Keontae, and then you have Taylor Hendricks and Bryce Sensabaugh, of course. I think there's a lot of, so I think Keontae has a really good case to be a dark horse candidate. But it's really tough when you have guys like Victor Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren, Scoot Henderson, all competing for the same award. Like, yes, Keontae is going to be great. I feel like he's going to be like a really good player for the Jazz, but I mean, you're going against like 3 really like top tier prospects. Keontae is not that yet. Maybe he develops into an all-star, who knows? But man, if Keontae were to come in and beat out those top, like, I mentioned like Brandon Miller or like the Thompson twins, it's a lot to go up against, especially on a roster like the Jazz when there's just so many mouths to feed. Like, you got 2 other rookies on the same team to try and get involved, along with every other one on the roster. So, I mean, Keontae definitely does have a chance. I think if you're looking at like the top 10 contenders come in and win that award, I think he's probably in there. Hendricks may be like on the border, maybe fringe as far as like top 10 rookie of the year candidates, but it would just have to take a lot. It would take a lot to go right for Keontae to win it. Maybe he comes in and averages 20 points per game and like becomes Donovan Mitchell 2.0. You hear a ton of fans coming out here being like, "Oh, he's gonna be the next Donovan Mitchell because he had such a good summer league." Maybe that happens. I'm not sure. But I think if I were to predict a rookie of the year right now, I would probably I wouldn't say Victor wins rookie of the year just because I feel like he may not play the games required in his first year. I think the Spurs are probably gonna be very cautious with their rookie Victor. I think Chet is an interesting candidate, but I think it comes down to how talented that Thunder roster is if they're gonna really have the means to provide a rookie of the year candidate. So that's why I'd probably say Scoot would be rookie of the year because the Blazers won't be that competitive. They're going to be trying to develop their young talent, and it's not a roster that's very deep like the Jazz's is. So if I had to pick a rookie of the year today, I would pick Scoot Henderson just for the opportunity and the prestige there. He probably is the best player outside of Vic. It's probably hard to really judge who's better between Scoot and Chet at this point in their career. Because they are such different players and they haven't really played a game, so you can't judge it. But I think the opportunity is much better for Scoot to come in and win that award. And then as far as the other award, I don't think the Jazz are going to win Most Improved a second year in a row. Maybe they're like the new Indiana Pacers, where they're producing Most Improved every year. And MVP, it'd have to take a stellar and like an outrageous season from Lauri Markkanen to actually get any consideration from that. And the Jazz would have to be like a top 3 seed in the West for them to do that. That would be pretty impressive. Is that realistic? I don't know. But who knows? It's the wait until the season. But I think that's about all I'm gonna have for tonight. Just because we are out of bets to really look over. Maybe there's some that come out as the season progresses, and we can dive into those when that time comes. But that is all I'm gonna have for today. Thank you all for coming in to support the stream. We'll be back next week, same time, same day. Hopefully, have more to talk about on that end because I mean we just got like a half dose of sports odds to look at today. Maybe there's some more. Well, FIBA probably wrapped up by that point. Maybe some discussion or some narrative on that. But yeah, thank you all for watching, coming out. Got some great shows here. Thank you, Ozwaki, Andrew, always popping in, always showing support. If y'all want more Jazz content, make sure to check out Inside the Jazz on Sports Illustrated. Or check out my other site, Inside the Kings. We just started about 2 weeks ago, covering the Kings over there. Popping in every once in a while over there. Still maintaining all the focus on the Jazz site, but got some other teams to kind of focus on as well. But if you want more of me, I'm at Jared Cook NBA on Twitter, and make sure to follow Inside the Jazz on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But yeah, that's going to be all from me. Have a nice night, y'all. See ya.